Welcome to the Through the Lens of Learning podcast. If we haven't met, hello, I'm your host, Dr. Tracy Schroyer. I'll give you 2 words that summarize me to a T: lifelong learner. Join me as I share a bit about my own journey of curiosity, learning, and wonder. You'll also get to hear from some phenomenal individuals on what they're curious about learning and what they have to share too. Are you itching with excitement yet? I am, so let's get started. Hello everyone, it's Dr. Tracy Schroyer, and I had gotten a question recently about what I thought or what I've read about quiet quitting. And this is something that I have heard, I've seen in some headlines before, but I hadn't really dove into. So I decided to look a little bit more and learn about what this whole concept is. And if you're not familiar, the concept of quiet quitting is something that's being talked about a lot on TikTok, which I am no longer on. But also I've seen it quite a bit on LinkedIn and then again in different news articles and headlines. And over the weekend, I dove in and learned a little bit more. So if you're not familiar with the concept of quiet quitting or the term quiet quitting, it is definitely not something new. It's just something that's being given this name, which I don't know that I even agree with the name completely. But the whole concept of quiet quitting is when an employee is in a role and they do bare minimum, like what they're expected to do. So they're doing their work, they're just not going above and beyond and giving any extra beyond what they need. And there's a clear division between work and personal. So they go into work, they do the bare minimum, exactly what they need to do. And I don't even like saying the bare minimum because they're doing what their job requires them to do, right? They're just not interested in doing anything outside of that or above that, and they're likely not interested in a promotion as well, is my thought. So it's not a bad thing, but a lot of organizations and a lot of employers expect so much more from employees than what the job requires. Everybody always talks about the other duties as assigned, and the expectations of people to go above and beyond. And I'll tell you from my perspective, the pandemic, I would say it's not changed completely how people are in their roles, but it has advanced more quickly the difference of people in the workplace. And so now I would say there's not really a division between work and life. There's a change in the blend and the shifting and the maybe swirling of the two and going in and out. There are so many employees get to work from home, and that is the ability for them to, work in the center of their life and where that is. So quiet quitting, I don't like to call it quitting because you're doing your job. You're doing what's required of you. You're just not doing anything outside of what that job requires. And is that necessarily bad? I don't think so. But if you're used to being in a culture and an environment and an organization where that is the expectation and people start to do the minimum job requirements, it's very awkward and it's very strange and it's very weird. So I can see from the perspective of quiet quitting from an organization or a team culture where that is the norm and that is the expectation, it can seem very strange to see that shift. But in an organization, if that's how it's typically been, or in those kinds of roles, that's no different than the day-to-day how things have been. The other term that I've come across recently is quiet firing. And quiet firing, just like quiet quitting, is not a new concept. It's given this name. And I saw this when I had my first job in a pizza place. Quiet firing is basically when a manager is trying to get rid of an employee without directly firing them. They don't want to maybe have to pay severance, or they don't want to have to pay unemployment. And so what they do instead is pretty much make your life miserable or The example that I saw in the pizza place was that if somebody they wanted to let go, but they didn't want to, come out and fire them, that they would cut their hours. So instead of you having maybe um, 30, 35 hours or even 40 hours, they would pull you down to like a very minimum hours. And my husband and I were talking about this recently, and he said he even saw the occasion example in a pizza place of instead of you getting all these hours that you used to get, whether you're a driver or you're a maker or a cashier or whatever, that they would give somebody the hours of Friday from 5 to 6 p.m. and that was it, just that 1 hour. So basically, it's not even worth your time to come in, that you would eventually quit and they wouldn't have to worry about it. So I have seen this, I have heard of this before. It's just never had this name, so this quiet firing. So it happens all the time, all over the place. Is it right? No. But is it going to continue to happen? Yes. But the bigger thing is the quiet quitting and thinking about this concept and how it happens in workplaces. And the hard thing is if you're in a role and you're in an organization where the quiet quitting is not the norm, that there are these expectations, and it's even hard to say expectations or like doing the bare minimum, because it's hard to even say going above and beyond. It's just, I believe a lot of people have within them that maybe it's a nature, nurture, whatever that is, but they want to do so much more. And you know what? It ties back to engagement. So that's the other piece I wanted to talk about. So a lot of my graduate students that I work with in the Industrial Organizational Psychology program, we talk about we talk about employee engagement. And employee engagement for the longest time has been in the dumps. Like, let's be honest. The percentage of employees that are typically engaged in a workplace is in the teens. Like 13%, 18%, like down in the dumps, like not good. I believe that there are different, I guess on the continuum, you have people who are engaged. So, that percentage that are really engaged. And then you have a huge percentage that are not engaged. And then you have people somewhere in the middle. So they kind of like sit on the fence, and sometimes they are, depending on what maybe the project is or the initiative or the time of year even. Some people get more engaged the closer it gets to getting a review. So a lot of my graduate students have looked at and explored employee engagement and started to pick apart pieces related to employee engagement. Like one example of that is, does it have to do with onboarding? Like based on how a new employee is onboarded and maybe the impact, 90 days in or a year in, and how was that onboarding experience to bring them into the organizational culture. Another example is training and development. What type of training and development were they given? And was it just the standard compliance training that they were given? Were they given more than that? And how has that shaped their experience in the organization and their engagement because of maybe the training and development they've gotten? Another aspect that has been looked at too is leadership. And is leadership involved in the employees? And I know this is an aspect that was touched on in one or two, I think it was actually several articles for quiet quitting that I found, is the leader's engagement with the employees. It's very shocking to me, and I am a new people leader. I've been a leader in all respects. I've been a people leader before too, or leading without authority. By not being a people leader, but being a people leader, I can't imagine not connecting with your employees, because when you become a people leader, it's not really about you. No matter how hard that is for some people to take, it's not about you and your success alone. It's about the team. and how the team works together and how they can be successful together. And the leader needs to support the team members individually and collectively to help them reach that goal or to overcome those challenges or roadblocks. And that was one aspect of quiet quitting, is that people are doing it because their leaders don't seem to give a crap. That they're not engaged with their employees. And maybe the leader has a case of that where they're disengaged and they don't get the support that they need from their leaders, and so it becomes hard for them to support their people. Or in a lot of cases, in a lot of organizations, there have been people who have been promoted into people leader roles that are really good at what they do, but they are not people leaders, and they have not had the experience of people leadership, and they don't get the support and the insights to help them become a true, good, great people leader. So what you did, I can't remember what the name of the book is. What you did before, like, won't help you to become. I can't remember exactly the name of it. What you did before won't get you. What you did before won't get you there. I'm trying to remember it, I can't. But just because you're really good at what you do doesn't mean that you can shift into. It is a shift into a people leader role. So a lot of organizations, and I've heard from numerous in different industries, that people are really good at what they do. They get into people leader roles and they don't know what to do. They're not succeeding, or they're getting moved around because of it. So that is one aspect too of quiet quitting, is leadership disengagement. So all of these aspects are they go into so much more depth and more detail when we start digging into the research in them, and everybody has a different perspective, and it's based on their experience. Everybody has a different experience they bring to the table in one or more organizations and one or more teams. So it is a very complex concept and topic to talk about, and I only bring to it my vision of what I'm seeing, what I'm seeing in some of the research about employee engagement. I definitely am even more interested in digging into the concepts and the topics related to engagement and the concept of quiet quitting, to learn a little bit more. And how can we help leaders and people? I think it's more in the leadership realm, though, because if you're coming to the table and maybe you're not doing the quiet quitting and you want to go above and beyond, or maybe you are doing the quiet quitting and nobody even recognizes that it's there and that there are opportunities for additional engagement, then I think it's upon the leader to help bring that out of the people in the organization. But I know it's also hard too, because it depends on where you are in the leadership chain as to the support that you're getting from your senior leadership and down. And so there's so much of a domino effect in it. But I really want to dig just that question of, have I looked into that quiet quitting concept? It takes me deeper into employee engagement and changes. And I know the pandemic has affected a lot of us. I don't even know that there's even this work-life balance anymore. A lot of it is just like congealed together, and trying to figure out how to make it work across all of it. So just interested in digging into it a little bit more. Would love to hear more about your thoughts on some of these concepts that I mentioned, and your experiences. I think maybe this could end up being a season of the Through the Lens of Learning podcast, that I talk with people about their learning journey through people leadership, or through, looking at it from a people leadership perspective and engagement. So I think there's a lot of more opportunity for discussion here and to dig deeper, and we're not going to find all the answers, but if we can find out and share something that helps one person, oh my gosh, is it worth it? That one person can affect so many other people. So it's absolutely worth it. So that's just my thoughts, my initial thoughts, and 2 cents on just thinking about the concept, starting to dig into it, and kind of how my brain works and where that all goes, from just that one concept and starting to dig into it. So let me know if you would be interested in sharing and talking a little bit more about your journey in a people leadership role, or even your thoughts. If you're not in a people leadership role, your thoughts or questions or insights or experiences based on some of these things that we talked about. Thank you, and I hope you have an awesome day. Bye. This podcast is brought to you by Upskill University. You can find more information about how to become part of the Upskill community for free, this and other episodes of the Through the Lens of Learning podcast, and more on the website at www.upskilluniversity.com. Thanks again for listening, and have an awesome day.